All right, so good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to round three of past 2015 Speaker Idol. Actually, I have to look at my slides to remember what year it is. It's been a very long day. My night ended at 3:30. My morning started with a 6:30 breakfast in the convention center as a panelist. It's been a long day. So my name is Denny Cherry Associates Consulting, based out of lovely San Diego, California. Come on in, guys. There's plenty of room. Please do make sure to turn off your cell phones. Normally, I would simply confiscate them and talk to your boss, wife, lawyer, child, whatever. But it will screw them up probably a little more than it would throw me off. So our format today is each of our four victims will come up here and they get 5 minutes on stage to give you the best presentation they have available. Hopefully they've got something prepared. Once they're done, our lovely panel of judges will give them some sort of feedback, hopefully a positive and useful critique. Once that has all happened, at the end of this session, our judges are going to pick a winner. That person has a whopping 15 minutes to get their next presentation put together. As our finals start as soon as this session ends after a 15-minute break.
Denny, rule amendment proposal.
Yes.
The winner of this session gets to go last in the final.
We're going to need to flip a coin between the person that...
No, the person who wins.
Person who wins this one?
Yeah, gets to go last because they won, right?
All right, fair enough. So Friday afternoon, in the 15 minutes between sessions, our judges are going to pick a runner-up or wildcard person from the three people that came in second of the three sessions we've had so far this week. Those four people are then going to compete this afternoon using the exact same format, with one slight difference at the end of the second session this afternoon. The winner will have won. What they will have won is a speaking slot at the Past Summit in 2016. How much have you had to drink already today, Mark? You have no idea. Awesome. That's going to be a good sign for the rest of the afternoon. You get a whole 12 months to panic about what you are presenting and if your slides are going to be good enough to compete with the likes of Bob Ward, Paul Randall, etc. You get some free speaker training from Omar Rivas. I have an actual prize to hand the winner. Of course, you get bragging rights of the fact that you have completely destroyed 11 of your competitors on stage and TV. And of course, you get the awesome 2015 Speaker Idol winner logo. Customized this year, not the same as last year's. The colors are slightly different. Our judges for this presentation will be Mark Sims, the crazy man from Microsoft, who likes to deal with weird problems and beat on them for long periods of time. Joey Diatoni, my personal whipping boy. Alan Hurt, the Disney fan. Andre, the Flying Dutchman Common. And Hope, I like screwing up my friend's panels fully because she became our second Microsoft employee on the panel without telling anybody. You're supposed to consult with me before making any career decisions before pass. So we do have four speakers today. I'm going to butcher your name, and I'm sorry. Luciano, I'm not even going to try. Moria, was even close. All right, okay, so we're going to go with that was perfect. Ronald Tamerman, Teresa Iserman, and did I slaughter yours as well? Awesome. Again, I had 2 hours of sleep last night. And David Maxwell. So our first presenter, Luciano, come on up. So Luciano is a SQL Server consultant and instructor. Started working with SQL Server back in 2000. I'm guessing it was probably SQL 2000 back then as well. Went from MCM wannabe to a database geek, working with SQL Server, DB2, Oracle, and Mongo. He's been one of our Microsoft MVPs since 2010. Currently a chapter leader for the SQL Server DF down in Brazil, and been doing that since back in April. He's spoken at TechEd Brazil, a bunch of SQL Saturdays, and obviously his LinkedIn profile is right there. So, sir, it is all yours.
All right, can you hear me in the back? Just let's get things rolling then. Hello, my name is Luciano, and today I'm going to present to you about IndexSeq. the goal of the presentation is to go a little bit under the hood on how IndexSeq works. So this is an intermediate level session. So if I go through some base stuff and you don't get the details, feel free to come here later and we can discuss and talk about that. So suppose that you got a cluster index on a column, on an identity column. What you're gonna have inside SQL Server are some pages, 8K pages, and a lot of data that is linked together. And this is a tree structure. So when SQL Server receives a query, suppose one like this, and the query optimizer decides that I'm going to be doing an index seek on ID equals 30, what really happens is that at first we need to find out what is the root page. And in this case, the root page is page 600. And SQL Server will go through those records trying to find the one that met your predicate. In this case, I got a little animation here so you can follow how the seek works. 30 is a value between 1 and 100. So right now, what SQL Server needs to do is to go to page 500 on file 1. And so he follows that path, and he continues to look for value 30. So he goes, all right, 30 is not between 1 and 10, is not between 11 and 20, and I can see that 30 is actually between 21 and 30. So the next step is to go to the leaf level here on page 113, and SQL Server will do a quick scan on the page to find record with ID 30. And since I mentioned this is the cluster index, we got the actual data on the leaf level, but from a data structure perspective, there is no difference between an index seek on a cluster or on a non-cluster index because both of them are B plus trees, okay? So this suits for any index that you have, being clustered or non-clustered. I have a quick demo, and with this demo, my objective is to make the same basic steps that I just did with some variation, just for you guys to really check what is going on inside SQL Server. So I'm going to change here to SSMS. I have preloaded some data, all right, on this table, just some dummy data. And I got an index, a clustered index on the ID column. And when I execute this query here, searching for the predicate ID equals 30, what you can see is that I found the name Gloria, and actually SQL Server decides to do an index seek on my index. All right, so what we're gonna do right now, we're gonna simulate how the storage engine works. So at first, I need to find out my root page. I'm gonna check out some metadata, and here it is. I found the root page. I'm not be doing all this byte swapping thing here and not going to details of how the BCC page works. You can check Paul Randall's blog over there. But what I want to do is, I want to check what is the content of page 709. This is my root page for my index. So come here. I can see the root page, page level 2. This means that my tree has 3 levels because always the leaf level is 0. And here I have this column, this ID key, that is the lower bound of the values on page 790. So if I'm looking for ID 60, there is a value between null and 12,000. I need to go to page 313. So I'm getting down 1 level in my tree. So I'm now at level 1. I keep looking for ID 30. It's between null and 60. So I need to get down to page 301. And do you see that the format changed because this is a data page? And if I quick find for ID equals 30 here, and what I'm gonna find is Gloria Silva, the record that we are looking for. With this, I end my presentation. Hope you enjoyed, and thank you.
There we go. So, Andre, you have the mic. We'll start with you.
Is it switched on? Yes, it is. Okay. First of all, I liked it that you slowed down a bit because you're not a native English speaker, and neither am I, so I know to do this during presentations because not everybody will be able to understand me. And I cannot use a lot of words because I just don't know them in English. So I have to talk a bit slower, and I liked it that you did that as well. You had a zoom it in the end, but that was way too quick. You zoomed in for like half a second. If you use zoom it, do that a bit careful as well. Your animations on the slide I like them, but they were very subtle. They were hard to see if you're in the back of the room, I think. But the arrows moved a bit and the numbers moved a bit. That was a lot of work, I'm assuming, to create that. And your management studio result was the font was too small. You can change that as well, that the font will be bigger. But overall, that was it. Good. Well done. Your timing was very well, I think. 5 seconds. Yeah, it was good. All right.
So again, overall, really good job. The one thing I did like that you did up front is that you set expectations. You said, this is an intermediate session if you need to know the basics. I may cover the one or two of them really quickly, but if you need to know more, come up to me after. So I thought that was actually really good. Again, same thing, I noticed the font, but then you zoom it so it was okay. And your use of the little highlights was also very nice. So it's like, here's a result, and I'm going to underline it for you. The only real thing that I noticed that wasn't, I've done stuff like this too, is you said you're going to look for page 709, but it was page 789. So again, it was clear what you were looking at, but you just have to be careful of stuff like this. I've done it myself, but just be cognizant. But overall, really good job.
Well, it's no trouble to tell someone was paying attention. I like the story. That the challenge was, if I didn't already know the story, I might have gotten lost in some of the transitions, especially if you're introducing the topic quickly or for the next time. It's always good in terms of your visuals to really lead people down the trail of breadcrumbs. Because I know what a bee tree looks like, happily enough, but flipping between the columnar representation of one slice of the bee tree versus the visual one, it would have been really great to kind of just lead folks very cleanly through, all right, here's the beginning of the story. I have a table, here's the index, here's a query. Okay. From there, here's a visual representation of the tree juxtaposed with what we see in Management Studio to help people frame the transition from the tabular model to the graph, the tree, in their heads, and then just walk through that very slowly. And when you have compressed time, you can't talk to as much of it, so richer visuals help people frame things. But I think all the right elements of the story were there, but if you kind of flip them around a little bit and a little bit more context, I think for folks who are coming at this for the first time, it's just a little easier to follow.
Yeah, pretty much what everybody else said. I think overall it was pretty good. That's really, I think that one slide where you had your visual with a little bit richer animation and maybe different animation could have improved that a good bit. But otherwise, nice job.
Yes, it's what they said. Plus, yeah, the animation, it was very subtle in the highlighting. So, yeah, if there was something that drew your eye, you drew a little more attention to it. I know those were probably very difficult to do. So, yeah, if they were very subtle. So, and then, yeah, I appreciate the bravery of going that deep in 5 minutes. So, but very good. Good job.
Cool. Thank you very much. Yeah, you just take a look. These silly adapters you have to use when you're not from America. Cool. So our next lucky victim is Ronald, whose name I have already slaughtered once today, so I'm not going to try again. So he works for Axsoft in Tampa, Florida, where he's the lead DBA for them. He's bragging that his manager is also on Twitter, apparently. Although he doesn't give his... oh, yeah, there's yours. Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah, like I can remember everybody's name. I can barely remember my own name. If this were his SQL Saturday, it would be May 17th, but it's not, it's past.
Wait a minute, it would be my 17th.
Oh, it'll be a 17th. Hey, apparently can't read today either. Fortunately, I don't have to give the presentations. I can screw up as much as I want today.
Okay.
Because I'm done with my sessions at this point. When he's not working, he's playing softball, reading, and apparently likes Linux, so you and Joey have something to talk about after the fact. So, sir, it is all yours.
Okay.
If I hit the button correctly.
Yeah. So,
Or the right button.
got it? Okay, here we go. As soon as I unlock my phone. Okay. Hi. This is my third PASS Summit. It's my first time on stage, so I'm hoping the third time's a charm. I've always thought that PASS Summit could use more security talks. So as public service today, free of charge, today only, I will do a security talk. Our topic today, SQL injection. We'll talk about what it is, what it looks like, and how to defend against it. So SQL injection happens when your web app accepts user input without any kind of intervention and sends it right to the database. Also, it happens because you have to have an ID that has excessive permissions or, in today's case, has sysadmin rights. So what could happen? Well, with these conditions in play, anything could happen. Hypothetically, can you imagine a disappointed speaker that's never been accepted to PASS Summit, what he could do with SQL injection? So it's time for a demo. So I just want to show you that database mail is not configured on this box. And you can tell that by the fact that only the new options are available. So I have a web app running in Management Studio. Thank you, SQL Chicken. And you can see what the typical query would look like if you put in username and password. And that's what it typically looks like. Now, we have some code that our nefarious evil villain uses. And he will plug it into the web app, and he could use either field for this to work. And he submits it. And you can see here, he submitted all the code that he needs to do to set up DB Mail with an account name hack, profile name hack. So let's go back and look at the server. And you can see now all the options are available. And you can see the account has been created. So now he has access. Now he's going to try to figure out what's on the box. So he decides to run a select query. And like I said, well, you can use either of these fields to inject the code in this case. So he submits it. And then at this time, he's selecting from the abstracts table, and he just wants to see what's in the abstracts table, what abstracts have been submitted, and he's emailing the results to himself. So finally, he takes advantage of his access. Runs this query. Let's see what he's done. Update speaker abstracts. Set accepted where last name was Dameron. I don't know this guy. So this is my evil twin. So just to prove that I didn't trust the Wi-Fi, so the email actually did get sent. So you can see here the actual list of, whoops, well, I don't know. Yeah. Sorry, didn't do that in the practice session. So you can see he actually got the information. And then to defend against SQL injection, you need to sanitize your database inputs. You use parameterized queries. Don't grant excessive permissions to the database login that's used by the web app. Wikipedia actually has a pretty good article about mitigation, and then depending on the technology you're using, consult your vendor-specific documentation. So that was a lot harder than it looked. Thank you. Gosh, That was harder to prepare for than writing an abstract. Thank you.
Hope?
You feel better now that it's over, right?
Oh gosh, I'm gonna go down to El Baracho and have a few margaritas.
Yeah.
Amen.
I understand. Yeah. So good job. I like the
Thank you.
story. I thought that was definitely very cute with the what you were doing there.
Yeah, I just
so
hope the program committee takes it the right way.
yeah, they have lovely senses of humor. I'm sure. So the only thing like nitpicky that I have was the queries that you were copying from and putting into the app.
Yeah.
It was way long, and
Yeah,
the font of it was small, so we couldn't tell. So even if you
Okay.
just like would have broke that up to where we could see it better.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
but other than that, good job.
Thank you.
Yeah, likewise. The thing Hope mentioned,
Oh, wait, give me the mic back.
and I like that the music thing at the end was cool, but I would have driven that from my laptop and not held your phone because that was a little distracting. One other cool trick with the email, and yeah, it's risky because it does depend on internet. But one thing to note, we always have a wired connection on stage because I did something like this in a presentation I did here last year, where I did an automated build and had the server email me, and I was able to show the Outlook notification, and that looks really cool. Yeah.
So one thing in terms of setting up the story is I wasn't clear who the audience was, because when you're talking about SQL injection, if you're talking to a DBA or a database developer or an app developer, it's a very different discussion. Because as a DBA, it's look for these things in your basically in your logs. Make sure you have your privs set up this way. Don't give those bad application developers like me unrestricted access. So your app developers, I actually want to see good, bad, and definitions for, say, a SQL command. So all the elements were there, but in 5 minutes, you kind of got to pick one audience and be very crisp about. And DBAs in the room?
Yep.
Yep. One good thing is, especially if you can go either way, check the audience at the beginning, and then just adjust on the fly. It's a little more work. Got to be doing it a few times, but just things to keep in mind.
Similar comments. I think the story could have been a little stronger from end to end, and I didn't really see. You had some takeaways at the end, but it didn't. I think it all could have been tied together a little better. And I noticed you had a few flow issues, like you were jumping around between like DB mail and whatever. Like I think you made a couple logical assumptions, like this needs to get set up. Like in your head, you've done it a million times, so you know. No, it's not. But I'm just saying, in general, like it's one of those things where you have to think about it as you're going to the audience. Every step has to flow together, and especially when you're switching either between screens or VMs, there have to be logical transitions. And if they're not properly sort of explained that way to people, they can get a little jumpy and lost. But overall, not a bad job at all. The one thing I will say is, I would agree with Mark here that the phone thing was a bit distracting.
The phone, okay. I was using the Office remote for Android, and I was trying to watch the time.
Okay, so just as a point of reference, don't ever do that. So one thing.
A watch is a really good thing.
A watch, or even actually newer versions of PowerPoint have, you've been doing this, because the thing is, when you do this, it makes people either think you're reading. It looks almost like you're reading notes, or something. So, no, and totally cool. But I'm just saying, just be aware that to an audience, it looks like something else might be happening, or somebody could be texting you, or I mean, so the use of a phone in any way, it has to be really carefully considered as part of any presentation.
So I usually just lay mine on the podium with the timer.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, like I said, I was using Office remote for Android, and that's how I was advancing the slides.
Yeah.
So,
Problem is you had to look at it in order to.
Yeah.
So the fact that you could show a web page inside Management Studio was pretty cool. I've never seen that before.
You can thank, like I said, I crashed and burned
Oh, you don't
on
like it?
Thursday, and Jorge Segarra, who works for Microsoft SQL Chicken, he said, Ron, you can do this in Management Studio. And I'm like, and he stepped me through it in front of the user group, and I went, wow. And he goes, Ryan, hello. Yeah.
So the part that I totally missed was the magic part in the long string where that did the trick. You didn't show what the magic part was, why it did that. I missed that. Also, the music was not loud enough. That was Bon Scott, right?
I tried to come in here and plug into the sound, but the cable wasn't long enough.
Okay, but AC/DC needs to be loud.
And I didn't see that
Ask the AV guy. He knows all. I had no idea how long that cable was. I just knew it was coiled up. I figured that would work. Yeah, that's what I'm here for. Abuse. Either way. So our next contestant is Teresa Iserman. She is a PFE from Microsoft. So she's been working with databases for over 15 years and has held roles working with both OLTP and data warehouses, web dev, and project management. Yep, flip that button on, and then give it about 3 seconds.
Let me just make sure you guys can hear me okay. Sound guy good? All right. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for coming. We're going to talk about 6 tips that you can put into play to avoid disaster in your companies. This presentation is all about you saving the day. But you might wonder, why would you want to save the day? Why would you need to? Well, let's step back in time a few years and find out why. This is a picture of my brother Michael and I, and it was taken in New York City in 1980. We were on a family vacation, and this was taken at the top of the World Trade Center. And this is the World Trade Center site today. I was in New York City last week, and I went to this memorial. And there was still so much of the sadness at this spot. As I walked away from the memorial, the technologist in me started thinking about what had happened to the companies that were in the towers and had lost their data centers, their offices, and all of their records. So I did some research. And Fortune magazine commissioned a study in 2010 to find out where the companies were then. And 2 stories stood out to me. Lehman Brothers had their data center in the North Tower. And they had complete destruction of all of their servers and systems. But they were back online and running by the time the bond market reopened a few days after 9/11. On the other hand, the New York State Department of Taxation and Finance spent years trying to reconstruct their data, and they never fully recovered. So that makes us think about what makes a company successful in recovering from disaster, and then what potentially puts a company out of business after disaster. Well, the answer is that it's either the people and the planning that make the difference in the success. And all of you are the people part of that equation. So let's look at the top 6 things that each of you can do next week when you go back to the office to help your company prevent a disaster altogether or to recover successfully from one. Number 1, first and foremost, schedule regular backups and tailor your backup schedule to your environment and to your business requirements. Number 2, validate your backups by regularly restoring them and make these tests part of your maintenance routines, because you really don't know if your backups are any good until you're able to successfully restore them. Number 3, enable the dedicated administrator connection, or DAC. The DAC is your backdoor into SQL Server when no one else can connect. But you need to enable it in advance. Number 4, practice restoring the master database onto another instance. It's not difficult to do, but there's some nuances that make restoring master different than a user database, and you just need to get familiar with the syntax in advance of needing it. Number 5, set the page verified database option to checksum for any upgraded databases. Checksum does a more thorough check for corruption than torn page detection does. And number 6, run dbcc checkdb on your user databases, actually on all of your databases, regularly. dbcc checkdb will enable you to find and fix corruption before it impacts your ability to restore a database backup in a disaster. And if you have any questions about how dbcc checkdb works, help is just a tweet away. There are lots of friendly experts waiting to help you. So to wrap up, be sure to practice the things that we talked about. The time to learn to put out a disaster is not when your house is burning down. And you don't want to practice in front of the CIO. A professional prepares ahead of time. So let's review the 6 things that you can do to help your company avoid a disaster. Number 1, schedule regular backups. Number 2, validate your backups by testing them. Number 3, enable the DAC. Number 4, practice restoring the master database onto another instance. Number 5, set the page verify option to checksum. And number 6, run dbcc checkdb regularly. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Alan?
All right, so being the HADR guy on the panel, good job, good pacing. I like that you had personal touches in there of sort of, here's where we were on the towers and, this is where we are now. I remember when I was writing my 2000 book, which came out in 2003, I was actually told not to put anything about the towers because it was too soon. So it's kind of funny how that works, right? I thought your examples again were good of Lehman Brothers versus I thought that was again relatable. Probably the only real criticism I had, quite honestly, is the fact that, like, for example, the DAC isn't very straight. Like, if you don't know what it is or how to connect in using it, it would have been nice to see a little demo of here's how you enable it and here's how you connect through the DAC, right? It's a very simple demo, but I mean, overall, I thought you had very clear, actionable tips. It was very concise. Everything just flowed. So, excellent job.
The only remark I actually have is the restore the master database. You didn't tell me why. You said I should do that, but why? That would be cool to know. And you did explain it with a few other points. I thought I saw you were a little bit nervous in the beginning and could use some water. Make sure you always have some water that you can grab. But that's the only thing I have to say.
Okay, using an emotionally charged hook is always dangerous, and you did a very nice job of that. So well done. It's one of those things to watch out for, but when carried off, can be extremely effective, especially if with a good story behind it. One nitpick, because Alan decided not to be pedantic today. Most of those tips were not about avoiding a disaster. They were about maintaining data continuity in the face of a disaster. Very small difference, but just...
So that's a big difference.
Yeah. Because it's the disasters will happen. If they didn't happen, we wouldn't do any of this stuff. But it's really about that data continuity. Just more the theme that disasters can and will happen. If we knew how to plan for them, we'd all be out picking stocks. And this is just how you manage to get back, because that really was the theme of your story.
It's business continuity, not so much disaster recovery.
Yeah. And one other thing on some of these, just little trails of breadcrumbs to the details of how to do them, and kind of some practices around that would be just a really great takeaway for people to go, oh, I know I need to do it. Now I know where to go to find that specific thing, because MSDN docs can be a little.
If only we knew the guys that wrote those and could get that fixed.
Great job. I really enjoyed it. What everybody else said, I pretty much agree with. And Sim said something when he was being super pedantic to me that you didn't have an order by in your query.
Exactly, that was random 6 sections. So the presentation again to be 6 different ones.
Yeah, no, I thought you did a great job. It seemed like you were slightly nervous at the beginning, but by the end, your flow and your speed was perfect. It seemed like you had no nerves at all. So very good job. And the emotional tie-in there, it worked for me. So it was like, I never felt like sadness in a presentation before, but it works. So good job.
You've clearly never been to any of my sessions. Thank you very much. And I believe our final victim for today is Mr. David Maxwell. So he is a DBA and SQL architect for Nationwide Children's Hospital out in Columbus, Ohio, supporting 180 instances with versions from 2000 to 2014. You are aware we're end of supporting in 2005, right?
Yes.
Okay. I keep bringing that up.
Plans are already in place.
And that 2000 stuff, that's been out of support for like years.
Yeah, but it's still in use.
Yeah, it's, oh, right.
healthcare.
Oh, right,
It's healthcare.
healthcare. I'm impressed you have
Exactly. What are
any
you gonna do?
2012 in place at this point. So you can reach David on Twitter at DM Maxwell. If you really want to get hold of him quick, if you want to get a slower response, email him. If you never want him to ever actually get in touch with you, call him on the telephone. And you can grab his scripts and the slides from his WordPress blog. So with that, sir, that should be you.
All right. Morning, everybody. Gotcha. It's afternoon. So I'm going to talk to you today about fill factor. Fill factor is one of those options that you can use when you are creating or rebuilding an index, and it has to do with the amount of space that you use when you do that. Now, the most effective way for me to explain what that is, how it works, and why you might be interested in it is just to go ahead and show you. So I'm going to do that right now. I've got a demo table that I've created here that has a unique identifier column in it. And what I've done is I've inserted about 4,000 rows into that table. And then I have created a clustered index on that unique identifier column with a fill factor of 100. What that means is for every 8K data page that I've got within that index, I'm going to fill that to at least 100%. Try and get it as close to 100% as I possibly can. How many of you out there have indexes in their environment that have unique identifiers that we're using as indexes? Anybody? Okay. Let me rephrase that question. How many of you are running SharePoint? Stay with me. Okay. So once we've done that, I'll go ahead and I'll show you that since we've just created the index, we do not have any fragmentation on it currently. So right now we're at 0% fragmentation, and our average page density is about 99%. So about as close to 100% as we can get right now. I will go ahead and insert another 1,000 rows into this table. And then we'll take a look at that fragmentation again. Ouch. So with a 1,000 row insert, we've already almost completely fragmented the table. And now we're at only about 60% page density. So about 40% free space. Obviously, this is going to be bad for any time that we have to read that index. We're going to be jumping around all over the place rather than reading it in one contiguous block. We want to avoid that as much as we can for performance reasons. And this happens because of something called page splits. So what happens is, since I'm inserting data into random locations in this table, because of the way the clustered index is defined, if there's a page that I need to insert a record to, and that page is already full, I have to do a page split. I'm going to create a new page, move half the data from the original page into that new page, and then insert the record. And in this particular case, I did this 150 times. So I'm going to reset, truncate that table, put my 4,000 values back. But this time I'm going to rebuild that index with a fill factor of 60. Anybody want to guess where I got that number? My age. Nope. Right there. So 60 is a bit of a guess, but it's where we're going to start, because that's where our average page density is lying for 100% fragmentation. So let me go ahead and do that. Truncate the table, put 4,000 values in it, and rebuild with a fill factor of 60. Take a quick log backup, and now I'm going to go ahead and do my 1,000 row insert again. And this time, much improved. So almost no fragmentation. Page density actually went up, which means we're actually using more of the space that we've allocated. And I had to do all of one page split to accomplish that. So does this look like something that'd be interesting to everybody? Something you might want to look into for your environments? Good. So key takeaways from this, again, fill factor is how you tell SQL Server how much space on your data pages you want to use and how much space you want to leave over for inserts. you can configure fill factor in a couple of different places. You could do it for the entire instance using the spconfigure command, or you could do it for each individual index using the fill factor option that I showed in the demo script. And again, using a lower fill factor or lower or higher fill factors mean you're doing a trade-off. You're leaving room for inserts, but you're also padding out the size of the tables that you're creating with extra free space. That's something that you might want to keep an eye on. And remember, you have to test this very carefully in your development and test environments. What works really, really well for 5,000 rows might not really work well for about 500 million rows. So that's something that you're going to want to be aware of. And with that, if you have any questions for me, you can get a hold of me on Twitter, you can email me, and thank you very much for your time and attention. Enjoy the rest of your summit. And we're out.
Joey?
Good job. I have a lot of uncompleted comments because right as I started to type them, you addressed them. And the only real comment I have is I think a quick visual representation of what fragmentation looks like would have been nice. So just like a slide, and even if it was an image, it could have been cool just to show fragmented data and why SQL has to work harder. I thought your demo was really good. I liked everything you did there. That was awesome.
Thanks.
Yeah, no, you were asking questions of the audience, which was nice. You're trying to keep them engaged in your sessions, so that was very good. Your flow is great. Maybe just a sentence more of setup of this is what I'm doing, because you kind of, and I know you had great demos. Those were really great and effective. But maybe just a sentence more of setup would have been nice. Of here's where we're going. So.
Okay.
No, great to force the audience to engage, even if you occasionally get heckled, but that's always good. In a 10-minute...
I told Sims the SharePoint line right before you said it. That was
So the only thing, like I said, overall I liked it. The only two things were a little bit of context in terms of applicability. So a little hint on, hey, is this particularly bad for unique identifiers? Is this something that you always need to look for? Are there other data types and indexes? Right. And really just maybe like 30 seconds or a minute on, you talk about, hey, this is different in production. So if I'm running a bunch of production databases, what's my general approach for how to hunt these things out? And what's the impact on a larger scale and how to reason over that?
Sure.
Even if you just tease up the getting started to getting real, would have been great.
Cool.
And old Alan is back. So, overall, good job. I like the fact that, for example, your text size was perfect. None of us strained to see it. You didn't have to use a lot of zoom, and it was right there. You, for example, said, so you got the audience participation and said, well, if you're using SharePoint, you got a few laughs. But you never continued with that. You never explained why it mattered to SharePoint. Right. So for those of us in the room who may not use SharePoint or don't have customers that use it all the time, the link was completely lost. So it was like an in-joke, right? And when you then explain later, with the page splits caused 1,000 rows and the fragmentation, but you didn't do a link. You just sort of said, oh, we're going to look at sort of here's page splits. You didn't say, well, one of the things you may want to look at, like there was no logical link for me. And again, we've done this so we understand it, but you kind of have to, again, in telling the story, it's got to be smooth without a lot of skips. And the one thing I did notice too is as you were executing some of your scripts, you had a couple seconds of dead air. Now, we all do that sometimes. But especially when you have 5 minutes, sometimes you just fill it in with something like, where I'm talking about the SharePoint thing. It's like, as these scripts are executing, let me tell you why SharePoint matters or something like that. Just so that there's sometimes 2 or 3 seconds can seem like an eternity, especially if something starts to go south if something doesn't execute. So.
Right. Good point. Thank you.
Yeah, that was well done. I saw you make a log backup in the middle, and you said, let's make a log backup real quickly. I didn't really get why you did that.
Okay.
But overall, you have a nice voice to listen to. It works well for presentations.
Thank you.
And the only little comment I would make is for an international audience, you should maybe slow down a bit.
Sure.
Because that was a bit fast. But overall, good job.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. And now the judges have to do the thing that I'm very happy I don't have to do. They have to go away and figure out which one of these 4 fine individuals is going to be our first place and our runner-up. If you want to, while you're out there, figure out your wild card, since we only have a few minutes between sessions, although we are running a little early, so we do have time between if you guys don't want to do it right now. Let's. No, let's let the judges go do their thing. So while our judges are gone, we get to chat because we got to kill some time because there's a video camera currently staring at me, and I don't think they want to just cut out the next 5 minutes. So who here is a speaker? Okay, about half the room. Okay, of the speakers, who's done a 5-minute lightning talk or something in this sort of format? A very few of you. Okay, so for those of you who have never done this before, and if you've been the last couple of days, you've heard me say this before, this format is probably one of the most brutal formats to give a presentation in. Getting a story told in 5 minutes, as these 4 folks and the other 7 that have presented this week have found out, is extremely painful. Because you've got to introduce something, you've got to talk about it for a little bit, and then you've got to wrap it up and make sure that you've got your point across on that one piece of information. I know when I build sessions, I like to put about 1,000 slides into a deck, and then try to cram all that into a 60-minute presentation. That does not work when you have 5 minutes. You can get through about 7 slides if you talk really, really fast. I would recommend like 3 or 4, which is roughly, I think, where everybody was, I think, for all 3 days, which I thought was really good. This stage is actually not bad. Did anybody come to Speaker Idol last year? In the other room? So only a couple of you. So this stage is actually nice and quiet. Doesn't make too much noise. The stage that they presented on last year, except for that spot right there. The stage they presented on last year was one set of panels smaller, and the center piece of it, like right where I'm standing right now, if this was the whole stage, had the most annoying squeak. And I think everybody hit it at least once. And you have those are the sorts of things you have to figure out on the fly, and it gets just brutal to try to figure that out, especially in these tiny little sessions, these really short sessions. Why did you guys come see Speaker Idol? So what was some of the thought? What were you looking to get out of coming to this session? Since we're obviously at a conference, you're here to learn. There's lots of great technical content being delivered in the other session rooms today. So I'm curious what brought people into here to watch Speaker Idol and watch me embarrass the hell out of 4 of these folks. Yeah. Okay, watching a variation on presentation styles in a short period of time. Very cool. Yeah. Getting feedback from the judges because he doesn't want to get up here himself and have them destroy him. Oh, you do? Okay, excellent. We'll hope submit. Yeah, did you submit this year? Excellent. Submit next year too. keep speaking and keep submitting. Yes, sir. Yeah, so his comment was seeing how they could condense a talk down into just the 5 minutes and make it engaging still and still get content across. How many people submitted? So there were, I want to say 34 or 32 people that submitted, and then the 12 were selected. So we had a much better boy-girl ratio this year. Last year we had 1 woman submit. I believe this year we had 5. So much higher numbers this year, which I was very happy about because I want to get a more diverse group up here. Because PASS ain't bad as far as diversity goes. It's not like we're an all-male, it's not an all-white male speaker panel, but it's close. It is. I mean, it's close, and there are a lot more women sitting down there percentage-wise than there are standing up here percentage-wise. And I think PASS has the speaker talent to get it there. We just got to get more of those women actually submitting and getting accepted, and I'm hoping that this is a way we can help do that and get people a little more international exposure to help them get through that process. Even if they don't win this, I'm hoping that some of the people that are competing in this will be able to use the experience from here to kind of move on and just get accepted the good old-fashioned way Or be like our last winner and just get hired by Microsoft. That works too. Although, I guess that's not going to work for you. All right, I am impressed that the judges are still out there. Oh, talk about timing. They're walking very, very slowly. We've had to make like 4 new rules for this contest this week. Yeah, so we're gonna have to have a call in 2 weeks or 3 weeks. Oh, okay.
So the new rule is that the wild card winner goes first. Fair, because it's a seeding thing, kind of.
Yeah, okay.
And the person who won the last one goes last, because that's fair too. And that winner.
Oh, hang on. I gotta get the 4 people up here. Can't just say it. And you gotta give me a runner-up first. You guys are walking slow too. The death march to the stage.
And the winner is Teresa. Congratulations. And our runner-up is David. And
so do we know who our wild card is?
And the wild card winner is also David. Congratulations.
All right. All right, so you have a grand total of 30 minutes to get your new presentation ready. So we will be back in here at 3:30, starting there-ish. We've got 4 presentations to give. I have a slide deck to put together with 2 more names. Don't forget to submit your evals for all your sessions you go to this week. You've got lots of ways to do it. You've heard all this spiel before, and I'll see you all in half an hour.